All right, so a ratio. A ratio is something that sets up two things in order for it to be considered like comparable. So if you think of like miles per gallon in a car, right? If you hear in a car that your car gets 23 miles per gallon, that means that your car can drive 23 full miles when it uses 1 gallon of gas. So it sets up a set of numbers in order for you to be able to compare them. And the easiest thing, miles per hour is the easiest thing for you guys to think of because it's usually what you think of. Can anyone think of any other ratios that are common? What? Like a ratio, like two numbers that are used to compare something. What? No, this is, yeah, that would also work. So Zayden said RPM, those are rotations per minute. That's how many times your tire goes around in a minute, right? So rotations per minute is how many times something goes around in a minute. So like RPMs will work. And notice in all of these things, the P stands for per. So per is a way to use to compare something. So like if I put a number over something else, this is saying like miles per hour. These are two things being compared. So I'm comparing two things. When I compare two things, I'm able to kind of come up with something called a unit rate, which shows me the most basic form of a ratio. So like if I said I drove 600 miles in 15 gallons of gas. Like if you said I drove 600 miles and it took me 15 gallons of gas, you could figure out exactly how many miles I got per 1 gallon of gas, right? If I said that I drove 600 miles in 15 gallons of gas, all I would have to do is divide 600 by 15 and call it good, right? So I go for 40. So this is saying that I drove 40 miles for every 1 gallon of gasoline. That thing is called a unit rate. A unit rate is the most basic form of a ratio that shows you what you would use in like 1 gallon of gas or rotation in 1 minute. So those are the kind of things that we're looking for. A proportion is something that sets two of those things equal to each other. This thing that I just wrote right here is a proportion. So this is a proportion. A proportion is something that says that two ratios are actually equal to each other. So what we know is we can set two ratios equal to each other as long as we didn't change something, right? 600 over 15 is the same thing as 40 over 1. I can't change this and say like 600 over 15 equals 40 over 3 because they're not the exact same. They have to be the exact same, simplify it in order for them to be the same. So like if you think of like 1/2 and 2/4. 1/2 and 2/4 are both the same thing, right? They're 0.5. But if I said 1/2 and 2/3, 1/2 and 2/3 are not the same thing because one is 0.5 and one is 0.6. So those are not the same as each other. Okay, so proportions are when we set two things equal to each other. If we use general terms, we would say something like this. So a proportion looks like that. You set up a fraction equal to itself. Okay, so you set up a proportion with two ratios and an equal sign equal. And we'll talk about how to solve that in a second. Okay, and geometric mean, this is just an equation that I want you to know. The geometric mean is x over a number equals a number over x. Okay, this is going to be one of those things that just ends up being kind of like a formula, and you need to know the formula and how to use it. Okay, so x over a number equals a number over x. Any questions on that so far that you're looking at? Issues, concerns? All right. So let's go through a couple more things, talk about how to set up a ratio, what a ratio looks like, so on and so forth. Oh, this next part got cut off a little bit. So it says find the ratio of the length to width in each rectangle below. Which one is the width? The one that goes this way or the one that goes this way? It goes this way. Width is wide, right? Width is wide. So width means left and right. So in each of these, it says length to width. There's two ways that you can write a ratio. You can write it with dots, or you can write it as a fraction. So you can write it using dots or as a fraction. It doesn't really matter which one you use. Okay? If you're using dots, then dots just look like this. It's called a colon. So if I say width or length to width, we said the width is the wide one. So length is 4. Width is 12. Or you could write it as 4 over 12. Now, do you guys know how to simplify fractions? Like, this is a real question, yes or no? Do we know how to simplify a fraction? Right here. Simplify 4 over 12. Okay, so what Blake is saying is we find something that we can divide by the top and the bottom, right? Yeah. So we can divide the top by 4 and we can divide the bottom by 4. When we divide the top by 4, we get 1. When we divide the bottom by 4, we get 3. So the ratio of this, you could say, is either 4 over 12 or 1 over 3 because they're equal to each other. Everything about them is the same. 4 over 12 and 1 over 3 are exactly the same. That's how we set up a ratio. Okay? The next one, it says length to width. The length is 6, the width is 10, so I'm going to do 6 over 10. Length over width, or length to width. I don't really care if you use dots or a fraction bar. I almost always use fractions because it's easy. I just think that that's an easier thing to do. All right? So 6 over 10. Now, Blake said that I had to divide by 4 on the last one, so now I'm going to divide by 6, right? Okay, Maddie, what do I do? Why 2? Right. So what Maddie's saying is I can divide by 2 because 2 goes into 6 and 10 nicely. 6 goes into 6 nicely, but 6 does not go into 10 nicely. I have to find a number that goes in nicely. And the only reason that this one worked, as Blake said, was because 4 goes into 12 and 4 nicely. So this one is going to go in twice. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this ratio is going to be 3 over 5. Now, just so you know, 6 over 10 is called a ratio. 3 over 5 is called a unit ratio. It's the most basic form of ratio that we have. It's the most simplified ratio that we can get of us. Okay? And then the last one is 1 over 18. But you need to think about this. Well, maybe not. What's the big difference between this one and the other two? I'm going to give you a second to look at it. Yeah, makes sense. Inches and feet. Every one of these other ones was being compared to the same thing, right? Centimeters and centimeters. Oh, wow. Inches and inches. This one's sneaky because it's inches and feet, right? 1 foot is not the same thing as 1 inch. So that means that I can't say 1 foot over 18 inches. I have to keep it consistent. So what do I change to, like? 12 inches over 18 inches, right? Because 1 foot is the same thing as 12 inches. And so now I can simplify 12 over 18. What number goes into both 12 and 18? 3. Okay, 3 does. And 6 also does. Right? 6 and 3 do. So I'm going to do 6 because it's the bigger one. So it's easier. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 18 divided by 6 is 3. Questions on ratios? Again, ratio, unit rate. Okay? Setting up ratios should not be too big of a deal. At least I hope. Okay, tomorrow we're going to dig a lot more into ratios and unit rates and proportions and things like that. Today it's more about setting them up and remembering how to work with them from what we've seen in years past. Okay, this next one is a little bit trickier because it's asking us to use a number line to find ratio of distances. Okay, now in this one, I'm going to just kind of warn you a little bit. One of the things that a lot of people do here is they just look at the number. So like they see that this is 5, so it's got to be 5, or this is 7, so it's got to be 7, or from 5 to 7, whatever. They just try to do things with numbers. I actually count on all of these just because it's important. Okay, so it wants me to find the ratio of AB over DE. So AB is 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. You're going to notice that on all of these, I actually use my finger to count. So A to B is 3 units over DE is 1 unit. So the ratio from AB over DE is 3 over 1, 3 to 1. I'm going to give you a second to figure the rest out. Simplify them if you can. All right, so AF over AC, who's got it? 11 over 5. And if we have disagreements, make sure you shout them out. BD over CA. EB over BF. BE over EA. And BC over DF. 2 over 4 or 1/2. Same exact thing, right? 2 over 4 and 1 over 2 are the same exact thing. Now, realistically, I don't care which one you use. I don't care if you put 2 over 4 or if you put 1 over 2. It doesn't really matter to me, but I'm telling you right now, in the future, it is way easier to use 1 over 2 than it is to use 2 over 4. I would rather use small numbers than big numbers, right? And I'm sure most of you would rather use small numbers than big numbers because it just makes the math easier. Okay? This is really the last new thing that we're going to talk about because we haven't seen something like this. These questions are a little bit different. Okay? It's talking about the ratios in a triangle. Okay? I'm just going to show you how it works. But it's basically saying that each triangle has a certain ratio. Each angle of a triangle has a certain ratio. So in this one, it says that one of the angles has a ratio of 1 to 7. One of the angles has a ratio of 7 to 10. And the third angle has a ratio of 1 to 10. So it's giving you all three ratios. It's just giving it to you in a combined form. What you're going to do is you're just going to put an X in between or next to all those, add them together, and set them equal to 180. Okay? So in this, I'm going to say 1x. Oops. So in this one, I'm just going to say one of them is 1x. One is 7x, and one is 10x. And if I add all three angles of a triangle together, what is it going to equal? All three angles of a triangle added together equal what? 180. Is everybody in here capable of solving that equation? I hope so, right? 1 plus 7 plus 10 is 18. So 18x equals 180. Divide by 18, divide by 18. So I get x equals 10. Now the last part is asking you for the measure of all three of the angles. So you take x and you plug it back in, right? So when I plug x in for this one, 1 times 10 is 10, so 10 degrees. 7 times 10 is 70 degrees. And 10 times 10 is 100 degrees. And that's how you do every single one of those problems. Every single one is done the same way. You just take the numbers in the ratio, put an x by it, add them together, and equal 180. Okay, try the next one right next to it. Make sure that you know how to do it. We'll go through it together to make sure everything is okay. I'm assuming you all be all right. So we, again, take our numbers, x by them, add them all together, set them equal to 180. So 1x plus 10x plus 25x equals 180. 10 plus 1 is 11, plus 25 is 36. X equals 180. Divide by 36, divide by 36, and I get what? 55? It's just 5, isn't it? I don't know why it says 50, but it's just 5. So x equals 5. Now, when you want to figure out the measure of each angle, just plug it back in here. 1 times 5 is 5. 10 times 5 is 50. 25 times 5 is 75. That doesn't look good. That's because it's 125, isn't it? Wow. My mental math is really struggling today. It's a 4-day weekend. You don't think it was? No. Is it? I saw a funny thing in an interview, or a post where a guy was in an interview process, and the guy says, "Tell me one strength about yourself." The guy goes, "I'm really fast at math." He goes, "All right, cool. What's 35 plus 6?" And the guy's like, 27. He's like, "That's not even close." And he goes, "But it was fast." All right, now these ones. These ones are a little bit different, but I'm gonna just try to talk you through it. This is what we're gonna spend some time on tomorrow as well, but I want you to give some form of effort into it, okay? If you are solving a proportion, all you have to do is the butterfly method or cross multiplication, which I'm sure every one of you have heard of at some point, okay? So I'm gonna go through one that's a little bit trickier, not impossible, but just a little bit trickier. And I want you guys to try some, so that way you know that you can do it or know that you can't do it, okay? So here, this is like dead center in the middle. 3x plus 1 over 4 equals 5 over 2. So what we're going to do is we are going to cross multiply or use the butterfly, which means these two right here are going to get multiplied together, and these two are going to get multiplied together. So it's going to be 2 times 3x plus 1 equals 5 times 4. And now it's set up an algebra equation that you guys have been solving for weeks, right? And you have been solving algebra equations for weeks. So this is something that you should absolutely be comfortable solving. And if you can't solve this, then we have to fix something now, okay? Yeah. We're solving for x, yep. And all of these we're solving for x. So now we would distribute the 2 through here and here. 2 times 3x is 6x. 2 times 1 is 2 equals 20. So now we subtract 2. We get 6x equals 18. So x equals 3. If it asks you to. Does it ask you to do that? I honestly don't know. No, it just wants you to solve for x. Yep, so it just wants you to tell me what x is. Okay. Now as you guys work, I actually have an answer key up here. You can check your work against the answer key if you'd like to do that. Does anyone want to see more examples of this? Top ones are the same exact thing. You just do, so like in the very first one, you would just do 4 times 15 and x times 5. It's actually an easier step than this one.
Why can't you like do 4 times 3? So can't you like 15 divided by 5 is 3? So like you do 5 times 3 is 18, right? So why would you do 4 times 3?
You can. That's another way that you can do it. Yep, if that's the way that you see it, you can do it that way for sure. The only issue is sometimes you wouldn't be able to see the ratio perfectly. Like sometimes you might not be able to see what's going on. So like if you look at the one that says x over 17 and 8 over 136, you see that one?
Yeah.
If you don't know a 17 times something equals 136, it might be kind of tough.
Can't you divide it?
You could. You absolutely could. This is just a way that will work every single time, especially when we get down to the ones that are down in the bottom.
What are you?
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Because you want to solve the first one.
Butterfly method. 4 times 15 equals 5 times x.